The grand gates of the Blake estate opened to reveal a home cloaked in quiet isolation. Its sprawling gardens and towering walls spoke of wealth, but a different story unfolded inside. Ethan Blake, a widowed business magnate, lived in this mansion with his frail 7-year-old son, Logan. Despite the wealth surrounding them, the heart of the estate was marked by loss, a mother's absence, a father's guarded grief, and a boy's battle with illness. For years, Ethan had built his life on control and precision. His empire thrived, but his home remained a place of shadows. Logan, his only anchor to lost love, required constant care, but Ethan's fear of trusting others isolated his son. The house saw a parade of nannies, each dismissed after 2 months, leaving Logan with a rotating cast of caregivers and a father too busy with boardrooms to join him at the dinner table. When Amelia Harper, a pediatric nurse with a mysterious resilience, arrived for an interview, something about her presence unsettled Ethan. Her references were impeccable, her demeanor unshakable, but her honesty stood out. Amelia wasn't there to impress, but to make a difference. Ethan didn't know that Amelia would bring more than care into their home. She would unearth secrets long buried in the Blake family and challenge Ethan to confront the grief he had tried so hard to suppress. Her arrival marked the beginning of change for Logan's health and Ethan's heart. Yet, would Ethan's fortress of fear crumble under her influence, or would he push her away like all the others? This story is about love's power to heal even the deepest wounds, the risks we take to trust again, and the courage it takes to face the ghosts of our past. If you want to uncover the twists and turns of this emotional journey, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us create more stories that inspire and move you. Share your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned for the next chapter of this unforgettable tale. The Blake estate was eerily silent when Amelia Harper arrived for her interview. The stone facade, towering and unyielding, mirrored the reputation of the man who lived within. As Amelia stepped out of the car, a gust of cold autumn swept past her, carrying with it the faint rustle of leaves, a reminder of the season's inevitable change. She adjusted her coat, her gaze lingering on the towering windows that seemed to watch her as much as she watched them. Margaret, Ethan Blake's longtime assistant, greeted her at the door. Efficient and professional, Margaret led her through the mansion's expansive halls. Amelia's sharp eyes caught glimpses of the home's duality. Luxurious furnishings softened by signs of a child's presence, scattered toys, books left open on tables, and drawings pinned on the walls. They hinted at a household trying to balance affluence with the innocence of youth. Amelia entered the grand sitting room and found herself face to face with Ethan Blake. Dressed impeccably in a dark suit, Ethan exuded an air of authority. His piercing gray eyes assessed her with a calculated intensity that most would have found unnerving. Yet Amelia stood firm, her calm demeanor an unspoken response to the silent challenge in his gaze. "Miss Harper," Ethan began, his voice low and measured. "Your resume is impressive. 6 years in pediatric care and experience with children requiring specialized medical attention. You've worked with terminal cases. Why do you want this job?" Amelia paused, choosing her words carefully. "Because I believe care goes beyond medicine, Mr. Blake. Children, especially those like Logan, need someone who sees them as more than their condition. They need stability, trust, and love." Ethan's jaw tightened at the word, love. It was a concept he'd locked away with the memories of his late wife, Sophia. "Stability is hard to guarantee in this house," he countered. "Then perhaps that's what needs to change," Amelia replied gently. Margaret, observing from the corner, held her breath. No one spoke to Ethan Blake that way, not without consequence. But to her surprise, he didn't dismiss Amelia. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, studying her with renewed curiosity. "There are cameras in every room," Ethan said abruptly. "Your privacy will be minimal. Some find it intrusive." "I understand your concerns, Mr. Blake," Amelia said hesitantly. "But trust isn't built through surveillance. It's built through actions." The room fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the faint clock ticking on the mantel. Finally, Ethan stood. "You'll meet Logan tomorrow. If he responds well to you, the position is yours. Margaret will provide the details." As Margaret escorted Amelia out, she whispered, "I don't know how you did it, but you've already achieved what no one else has." He listened. Amelia smiled faintly, but inside, she felt the weight of what lay ahead. She wasn't just stepping into a job, she was stepping into a storm. The following day, Amelia arrived punctually, carrying a small package wrapped in colorful paper. Margaret met her at the door, expression softer than the previous day. "Logan had a rough night," she explained. "The change in weather often triggers his respiratory issues. May I review his night records?" Amelia asked. Margaret raised an eyebrow but nodded, leading her upstairs. Logan's room was a mix of warmth and sadness. Phosphorescent stars dotted the ceiling, and a constellation projector cast a soft glow. The boy lay nestled under a blanket, his pale face betraying his exhaustion. Amelia approached silently, her years of experience guiding her movements. "Good morning, Logan," she said softly. The boy stirred, his green eyes, so much like Sophia's, opening to meet hers. "Are you the new nanny?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Maybe," Amelia said with a smile. "But first, I brought you something." She handed him the package. Logan unwrapped it with deliberate care, revealing a miniature constellation projector. "Wow," he whispered, his eyes lighting up. "It's like having the universe in my room." "We'll create our starry ocean," Amelia said, "but only after breakfast. Deal?" Logan nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. As Amelia helped him sit up, Ethan appeared in the doorway. He hadn't announced himself, preferring to observe unnoticed. The way Amelia interacted with Logan, gentle yet firm, was unlike anything he'd seen before. "Dad," Logan called out, noticing him. "She's nice." Ethan stepped into the room, his expression unreadable. "We'll see," he replied. Throughout the morning, Amelia demonstrated her ability to integrate care seamlessly into Logan's routine. She turned breathing exercises into games, told stories during his nebulizer sessions, and even managed to get him to eat, a task that usually ended in frustration. At lunch, Ethan surprised them by joining the table. He observed as Amelia presented Logan with a colorful soup she had prepared. "What kind of soup is that?" Ethan asked, arching an eyebrow. "It's my special recipe," Amelia replied. "Rich in nutrients and low in sodium." Following Logan's dietary restrictions, Logan took a spoonful, his eyes widening. "It doesn't taste like medicine." Ethan hesitated before accepting a spoonful offered by his son. The flavor surprised him. "Not bad," he admitted, though his tone remained guarded. Later, in his office, Ethan called Margaret. "Cancel the interviews. Miss Harper starts tomorrow." Margaret blinked in surprise. "Are you sure?" She was rather frank during the interview. "Exactly," Ethan replied, glancing at a photo of Sophia on his desk. "Logan needs someone who isn't afraid to challenge me. And maybe I do too." That evening, as Ethan reviewed the security footage, he stopped at the recording of Amelia reading to Logan before bed. The boy's laughter filled the room, a sound Ethan hadn't heard in years. He allowed himself a moment of hope for the first time in a long time. The first week of Amelia Harper's presence in the Blake household brought subtle changes that might have gone unnoticed by an outsider. Yet, these changes felt monumental within the towering walls of the Blake estate. Tea once heavy with silence, the quiet corridor echoed Logan's laughter. For Ethan, these moments were comforting and unsettling, a reminder of what had been lost and might still be reclaimed. One evening, Amelia found Logan struggling with a puzzle at the dining table. His little hands fumbled with the pieces, his brow furrowed in concentration. She knelt beside him, her tone encouraging. "Let's try this together, Logan," she said, touching his shoulder lightly. From the doorway, Ethan observed, his expression unreadable. "He doesn't usually like puzzles," he remarked, stepping into the room. "Sometimes it's not about the puzzle," Amelia replied without looking up. "It's about the company." Logan grinned at his father. "Dad, come help." Ethan hesitated, caught off guard by the invitation. After a long pause, he joined them, his large hands awkwardly maneuvering the small pieces. Amelia watched as father and son worked, something shifting in the space between them. Later that night, after Logan had been tucked in, Ethan found Amelia organizing medical notes in the kitchen. He leaned against the counter, his arms crossed. "You're good with him," he said. "It's easy to be good with Logan," she replied. "He's a remarkable child." Ethan's gaze darkened slightly. "Remarkable but fragile. His condition doesn't define him," Amelia interrupted, her tone firm but respectful. "Logan is more than his illness, Ethan. You see fragility, but I see strength." For a moment, Ethan said nothing. The name Ethan hung between them without the usual formality. He didn't correct her. Instead, he nodded curtly and left the room, leaving Amelia to wonder if she had crossed an unspoken line, or perhaps opened a door that had been locked for far too long. As autumn deepened, the first significant test of Amelia's resolve arrived. A sudden cold front swept through the region, and the damp weather triggered one of Logan's most severe respiratory crises. It began in the middle of the night. Logan's gasping breaths echoed through the baby monitor in Amelia's room. She rushed to his side, finding him pale and struggling for air. Ethan appeared moments later, panic etched across his face. "What's happening?" he demanded, his voice trembling. "His airways are inflamed," Amelia said calmly, reaching for the nebulizer. "I need you to stay with him while I prepare his medication." Ethan froze, his gaze locked on his son's fragile frame. Amelia placed a hand on his arm, grounding him. "He needs you, Ethan. Breathe with him. Match his rhythm." Ethan nodded, lowering himself onto the bed. He cradled Logan against his chest, his breaths shaky but steadying as he followed Amelia's instructions. Logan's small hands clung to his father's shirt, his trust implicit despite the chaos around him. Amelia returned moments later with the medication, administering it with practiced precision. "Tell him a story," she urged Ethan. "A story?" "Yes. Something comforting. He needs to hear your voice." Ethan hesitated before beginning, his voice halting at first. "There was a little boy who loved the sea," he started, his tone growing steadier. "He dreamed of exploring the deepest oceans and discovering hidden treasures." Logan's breathing began to slow, his tense muscles relaxing as his father's words painted vivid pictures in his mind. Amelia watched silently, her heart aching at the tenderness of the scene. By dawn, Logan was asleep, his breathing regular. Ethan slumped into a chair, exhaustion etched into his features. Amelia handed him a cup of tea, sitting across from him. "You stayed calm," he said after a long silence. "How do you do it?" "I've had practice," Amelia replied softly. "Logan isn't the first child I've cared for." Ethan's sharp gaze met hers. "Who was the first?" Amelia hesitated, her fingers tightening around the cup. "My brother," she admitted finally. "William. He had cystic fibrosis. I cared for him until he passed." Ethan's expression shifted from curiosity to understanding. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. "William taught me what true strength looks like," Amelia continued. "And he taught me that fear of loss or failure should never stop us from loving fully." Ethan leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "Logan asked me once if his mother would still love him if she could see him now," he confessed. "I didn't know what to say." "You tell him the truth," Amelia said simply. "That Sophia's love for him is eternal, and yours should show him that." Their eyes met, a shared understanding passing between them. In that moment, Ethan realized that Amelia wasn't just a caregiver. She was a force of change, someone who challenged him to be better, not just for Logan, but for himself. In the days following Logan's health crisis, the atmosphere in the Blake household began to shift. Ethan started spending more time at home, drawn not only by the demands of Logan's condition, but also by the subtle transformations Amelia was fostering. The once stoic father began participating in Logan's therapy sessions, observing silently from a distance, then gradually joining in. One crisp autumn morning, Ethan entered the sunlit living room to find Amelia guiding Logan through a breathing exercise disguised as a game. She held a toy sailboat on a water tray, challenging Logan to blow gently enough to keep the boat steady. "Captain Logan," she said with a playful lilt, "your mission is to guide the ship safely to the harbor." Logan giggled, his breath puffing rhythmically, his pale cheeks flushed with effort. "I'm the best sailor," he exclaimed, glancing at his father for validation. Ethan's heart twisted. He saw the same vibrant determination that Sophia once had in Logan's green eyes. "You're doing great, champ," he said, stepping closer. "Do you want to try, Dad?" Logan asked, holding up the tray. Ethan hesitated. "I don't think I'd be very good at it." "Come on," Amelia encouraged, her eyes sparkling. "Every captain needs a first mate." The room fell into an easy rhythm as the three worked together, laughter replacing the tension that had once dominated the house. Ethan caught himself smiling more freely, his guard lowering in ways he hadn't thought possible. That evening, as the first stars appeared in the sky, Logan excitedly showed Ethan a new drawing. "Look, Dad. It's me, you, and Amelia exploring the ocean together." Ethan stared at the picture, his throat tightening. The three stick figures were smiling, surrounded by waves and glowing stars. Sophia was absent from the scene but not forgotten. Her presence lingered in the golden light emanating from the top corner of the page. "You're quite the artist," Ethan said, ruffling Logan's hair. "Amelia says Mom would be proud of me," Logan whispered. Ethan's gaze shifted to Amelia, who stood quietly in the background, giving them space. For the first time, he saw her not as an employee but as someone who had become indispensable to their lives. As the weeks passed, the fragile peace within the Blake household was tested by an unexpected discovery. One afternoon, while organizing papers in Ethan's office, Amelia accidentally knocked over a stack of folders. Among the scattered documents, her eyes fell on a police report detailing Sophia's fatal accident. One line caught her attention: "Suspicious circumstances regarding brake system failure." Before Amelia could process the implications, Ethan's voice startled her. "What are you doing?" She turned to find him standing in the doorway, his expression a mask of restrained fury. "The file fell," she began, her voice steady despite the tension crackling. "I didn't mean to pry, but—" "Get out," Ethan snapped, his tone as cold as the autumn wind outside. Amelia's heart pounded, but she stood her ground. "You don't have to face this alone, Ethan," I said. "Get out." His voice thundered through the room, echoing in the long silence that followed. Amelia left without another word. Her steps were measured, but her thoughts were racing. She spent the rest of the evening with Logan, helping him build a model ship. The boy seemed oblivious to the storm brewing in his father's heart, but Amelia felt its weight pressing down on her. Later that night, as she prepared to leave, she found an envelope in her bag. Inside was a check and a terse note. "Your services are no longer required." Amelia clenched the note, her jaw tightening. Instead of packing her belongings, she marched back to Ethan's office. She found him sitting in the dark, a glass of whiskey untouched on the desk. "You can fire me if you want," she said, her voice firm, "but I'm not leaving Logan. He needs me, and whether you admit it or not, so do you." Ethan's head snapped up, his eyes blazing. "You crossed a line, and you've built so many walls you don't even know who you're protecting anymore." Amelia shot back. "Logan deserves a father who can give him more than fear and control. He deserves love, and so do you." The room fell into a charged silence, broken only by Ethan's ragged breath. Finally, he spoke, his voice hoarse. "Sophia's death. It wasn't an accident." Amelia's heart sank. "What are you saying?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, the rare gesture betraying his vulnerability. "There was sabotage. A competitor wanted to send me a message. I've spent years trying to keep Logan safe because I couldn't protect Sophia." Amelia stepped closer, her voice softening. "Sophia wouldn't want you to live like this. And Logan must know that love isn't something to be feared." Ethan looked at her, his defenses crumbling. "How do I fix this?" "By starting with trust," Amelia said. "In yourself, in others, and believing that life, even with its risks, is worth living fully." Their conversation was interrupted by a cry from Logan's room. Both rushed upstairs to find the boy sitting up, tears streaming down his face. "I had a bad dream," Logan whimpered. "Mom was in danger and I couldn't save her." Ethan sat on the bed, pulling his son into his arms. "It's okay, champ. I'm here. And so is Amelia." Logan's gaze shifted to Amelia, his tiny voice trembling. "You're not leaving, are you?" Amelia knelt beside the bed, her hand covering his. "Not if I can help it, Logan. We're a team, remember?" That night, as Logan drifted back to sleep, Ethan turned to Amelia. "Stay," he whispered, the vulnerability in his voice unmistakable. "I'm not going anywhere," she replied softly. For the first time in years, the Blake household felt less like a fortress and more like a home, a place where walls were starting to come down and hearts were beginning to heal. The days that followed Amelia's decision to stay were marked by a fragile truce between her and Ethan. The tension from their confrontation lingered, but a newfound understanding seemed to simmer beneath the surface. Both were determined to focus on Logan, whose health had stabilized, though his fragile body required constant care. During one of these quiet afternoons, the past began to resurface in earnest. His phone buzzed when Ethan was in his office, poring over business reports. It was Richard, his lawyer. "I've uncovered more details about Sophia's accident," Richard said, his voice grave. "The sabotage? It wasn't from an external competitor. It was someone within Blake Enterprises." Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. "Who?" "Maxwell Bennett, your former head of security. He confessed to the police earlier this week. He claims someone in your inner circle coerced him." The revelation hit Ethan like a physical blow. Maxwell had been one of his most trusted employees, a man he'd relied on to safeguard his family. Betrayal, it seemed, ran more profound than he'd imagined. That evening, as Amelia prepared Logan for bed, she noticed Ethan standing in the doorway, his face pale and drawn. "Can we talk?" he asked. Amelia nodded, following him to his office. Once inside, Ethan paced the room like a caged animal, the weight of his thoughts pressing down on him. "Sophia's accident," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "was orchestrated by someone I trusted. Someone within my company." Amelia's heart sank. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. Do you know who?" Ethan hesitated before responding. "Not yet. But Maxwell Bennett, my former head of security, confessed to tampering with the car. He says he was working under orders, but I don't know who gave them." Amelia stepped closer, her voice steady. "You'll find out. And when you do, you'll hold them accountable, not just for Sophia, but for Logan. He deserves a father who fights for justice, not consumed by guilt." Ethan looked at her, the walls he'd carefully built beginning to crumble. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" "I don't," she replied with a soft smile. "I just say what needs to be heard." The following day brought a renewed sense of purpose to the Blake estate. Ethan had spent the night strategizing with Richard, determined to uncover the whole truth behind Sophia's death. Amelia, meanwhile, focused on creating a sense of normalcy for Logan, who remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around him. During breakfast, Logan excitedly shared his plans for a school project about marine life. "Amelia's going to help me build a diorama of the ocean," he said, his green eyes sparkling. "That sounds wonderful, champ," Ethan said, managing a faint smile. "You can help too, Dad," Logan added, his tone hopeful. Ethan hesitated, the weight of his responsibilities tugging at him. But then he glanced at Amelia, who gave him an encouraging nod. "Of course," Ethan said. "We'll make it a team effort." Later that afternoon, while Logan napped, Amelia found Ethan in the library, staring at an old photo of Sophia. "She always said life was too short to waste on regrets," Ethan murmured. Amelia approached cautiously. She was right. But letting go of regret doesn't mean forgetting. It means honoring her memory by living the way she would have wanted. Ethan turned to face her, his gray eyes filled with pain and gratitude. "You've done more for Logan and me than I could ever repay." "I'm not looking for repayment," Amelia said gently. "I'm here because I care." They stood silently for a moment, their unspoken connection growing more substantial. That evening, as the household settled into its routine, Ethan made a decision. He found Amelia in the kitchen, organizing Logan's medications. "Amelia," he began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Yes?" she replied, turning to face him. "I want to take Logan to the ocean," he said. Amelia's eyes widened. "The ocean? But you've always said it's too risky." "I know," Ethan interrupted. But I've realized that protecting him doesn't mean keeping him in a bubble. It means letting him experience life, even if it comes with risks. He deserves to see the world beyond these walls. A smile spread across Amelia's face. He's going to love it. Ethan felt a sense of hope for the first time in years, fragile but undeniable. It was a small step, but it began a new chapter for the Blake family. The Blake household buzzed with quiet excitement as plans for the trip to the ocean unfolded. For Logan, the anticipation was palpable. For Ethan, it was a mix of fear and determination. For Amelia, it was a chance to witness a breakthrough for Logan and the father, who had spent so long protecting his son that he had forgotten how to let him live. Ethan meticulously arranged every detail, from ensuring Logan's medical supplies were packed to booking a private beachfront villa with state-of-the-art facilities. Amelia couldn't help but smile as she watched him triple-check every contingency. "Ethan," she said one evening as they reviewed the itinerary, "you've covered everything. It's okay to let go a little. This is about making memories, not managing perfection." He looked at her, his expression softening. "I just want everything to go right. Logan deserves that, and he will," she replied, "because he has you." The drive to the coast was filled with laughter and Logan's endless questions about marine life. "Do you think we'll see dolphins?" he asked, his green eyes sparkling with hope. "Maybe," Ethan said, glancing at him through the rearview mirror. "But no promises, champ." Amelia chimed in with a playful smile. Dolphins are known to surprise people when they least expect it. As they neared the villa, the salty breeze carried the sound of waves crashing against the shore. Logan pressed his face against the car window, his excitement bubbling over. "I can hear it. The ocean." Amelia helped Logan out of the car when they arrived, his small frame trembling with anticipation. Ethan carried the boy down to the beach, the soft sand cushioning their steps. Logan's eyes widened as he took in the vast expanse of blue stretching to the horizon. "It's even bigger than I imagined," he whispered. Ethan crouched beside him, his voice gentle. "This is all for you, champ. For you to explore, to dream." Amelia watched from a few steps behind, her heart swelling. Ethan seemed to let go of his fear for the first time, allowing himself to be fully present with his son. The days that followed were transformative. Logan's laughter echoed across the beach as he collected seashells with Amelia, his pale cheeks flushed with the joy of discovery. Ethan, often watching from a distance, was drawn into their activities, his usual reserve replaced with a tentative openness. One afternoon, Amelia suggested a small excursion on a glass-bottom boat. Logan's excitement was contagious, but Ethan hesitated. "It's safe," Amelia assured him, "and Logan will be thrilled to see the ocean life up close." Reluctantly, Ethan agreed. Logan's awe was evident as the boat glided over the crystal-clear waters. "Look, Dad, fish everywhere," he exclaimed, pointing at the vibrant coral reefs below. Ethan sat beside him, his arm draped protectively around his son's shoulders. "Amazing, isn't it?" he said, his voice filled with wonder. Amelia stood nearby, observing the father-son bond growing stronger with each passing moment. It was a sight that brought tears to her eyes. Later that evening, Logan presented Ethan and Amelia with a villa drawing. It depicted the three of them standing on the beach, waves lapping at their feet, with a bright sun in the sky. "This is us," Logan said proudly. "And up there is Mom, watching over us." Ethan's voice caught as he took the drawing. "It's beautiful, champ. She'd love it." Amelia placed a comforting hand on Ethan's arm. "You've given him something Sophia would be proud of, freedom to dream." But the trip wasn't without its revelations. On their second evening at the villa, Ethan received a call from Richard. The investigation into Sophia's death had yielded a critical lead. "Ethan," Richard said, his tone serious, "the orders to sabotage the car came from someone close. Your cousin, Andrew." Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. Andrew had been a trusted confidant and part of Blake Enterprises for years. The betrayal cut deep. "Why?" Ethan demanded. "Greed," Richard replied. He wanted a controlling stake in the company and saw Sophia as an obstacle. Maxwell confirmed it during questioning. Ethan ended the call, his mind reeling. The man he had considered family had orchestrated the tragedy that had shattered his world. Amelia found him on the balcony, staring out at the dark waves. "What's wrong?" she asked, sensing his turmoil. "Andrew," Ethan said, his voice filled with quiet rage. "He's the one behind Sophia's death." Amelia placed a hand on his back, her touch grounding him. "What are you going to do?" Ethan turned to her, his jaw set. "I'll make sure he answers for what he's done. For Sophia, for Logan, and for the years we lost." Amelia nodded, her voice steady. "You're not alone in this, Ethan. We'll face it together." Ethan sat with Logan on the beach the following day, the waves lapping gently at their feet. "Champ," he began, his voice soft, "there's something I need to tell you about your mom." Logan looked up at him, his green eyes filled with trust. "What is it, Dad?" Ethan hesitated, then took a deep breath. "She loved you more than anything in the world. And even though she's not here, everything I do is ensure you have the life she wanted for you." Logan leaned against his father, his small hand clutching Ethan's. "I know, Dad. And I think she's happy now because we're happy." Ethan's heart swelled with a mix of pride and sorrow. In that moment, he realized that healing wasn't about forgetting, but honoring the past while embracing the future. Returning to the Blake estate after their transformative trip to the ocean was bittersweet. Logan's spirits were higher than ever, but Ethan carried the weight of the truth about his cousin Andrew's betrayal. The ocean's warmth lingered, but the shadows of justice and accountability loomed. That evening, as Logan slept, Ethan called a meeting with Richard and Amelia in his office. He laid out the evidence against Andrew, his voice steady but tinged with restrained anger. "I trusted him," Ethan said, pacing the room. "He was family. How do you prepare for something like this?" "You don't," Richard replied, "but you act. I've already arranged a meeting with law enforcement. Maxwell's confession and the evidence are enough to press charges." Amelia, seated quietly, finally spoke. "What about Logan? How do you explain this to him?" Ethan paused, his expression softening. "I'll tell him the truth, when the time is right. He deserves to know what happened to his mother, but I want to protect the joy he's found recently. I won't let this destroy him." Amelia nodded. "And yourself? How will you handle this?" Ethan's gray eyes met hers, filled with gratitude. "With help. If you're willing to keep reminding me, not every moment must be controlled." She smiled softly. "I'll remind you as often as you need." The day Andrew was arrested, the house was quieter than usual. Logan was at school, leaving Ethan and Amelia alone to navigate the aftermath. Ethan sat by the fireplace, staring into the flames as though searching for answers. "It's done," he said when Amelia entered the room. "Andrew will pay for what he did." Amelia approached, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "Justice is the first step. Healing comes after." Ethan looked up at her, his voice breaking slightly. "How do you forgive someone for taking so much from you?" "You don't have to forgive him, Ethan," Amelia said gently, "but you do need to forgive yourself. Sophia's death wasn't your fault, no matter how much you've tried to convince yourself otherwise." Ethan's shoulders sagged under the weight of her words, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to cry. Not out of anger or frustration, but out of a release of the guilt he had carried for so long. Amelia knelt beside him, holding his hand as a steady anchor. A few days later, Logan surprised them both with a request. "Can we have a party?" he asked, his green eyes wide with excitement. "A party?" Ethan repeated, confused. "Yeah, to celebrate Mom. Amelia said we should honor her, and I think a party is the best way to do that." Ethan exchanged a glance with Amelia, who nodded in quiet approval. "I think that's a wonderful idea, champ." The party, held in the newly completed memorial room for Sophia, celebrated life, love, and resilience. Friends, family, and employees gathered, sharing stories about Sophia that filled the room with laughter and warmth. Logan stood proudly beside the memorial shelf he had helped create, pointing out seashells, photos, and even one of his drawings. "This is our family," he explained to anyone who asked. "Dad, Amelia, and Mom are watching over us." Ethan watched his son, his heart swelling with pride. When Amelia joined him, he turned to her, his voice soft. I never thought I'd feel this way again. Like we're moving forward instead of standing still. Amelia smiled. That's because you've let go of the past without losing it. That's the balance Sophia would have wanted for you and Logan. As the evening wound down, Ethan found himself on the balcony with Amelia. The cool night air filled with the sounds of distant laughter and the rustle of trees. Amelia, he began, his voice hesitant. There's something I've been meaning to ask. She turned to him, her expression curious but calm. I don't want to wait anymore, he said. For anything. You've changed my life, Logan's, in ways I never imagined possible. Will you marry me? Amelia's breath caught, her heart pounding. Ethan, are you sure? After everything? I've never been more sure of anything, he said, his voice firm. Life is unpredictable, but I don't want to face it without you. Logan loves you. I love you. And I think Sophia would be happy to see us finding joy again. Tears welled in Amelia's eyes as she nodded. Yes, Ethan, I'll marry you. A few months later, the Blake estate was transformed into a scene of pure magic. The ceremony took place in the garden, where white and blue flowers created an atmosphere reminiscent of the ocean Logan loved so much. Amelia walked down the aisle, her dress simple yet elegant, her eyes shining with tears of happiness. Logan was her ring bearer, his little suit pressed perfectly, his smile as bright as the sun. Ethan waited at the altar, his gaze fixed on Amelia with a look of love and gratitude that spoke volumes. During their vows, Ethan said, "You taught me to let go, trust, and believe that love can heal even the deepest wounds. I promise to honor that love every day of my life." Amelia's voice trembled as she replied, "You showed me that life can surprise us with new beginnings even after loss. I promise to be your partner, anchor, and lighthouse, always guiding us through the storms." Logan surprised everyone by stepping forward with a slight speech of his own. "I promise to be the best son to both of you, to make you proud, and always to remember Mom, who I know is happy for us today." The crowd applauded as Ethan and Amelia sealed their vows with a kiss. As the reception wound down, Ethan, Amelia, and Logan stood together on the balcony, watching the stars. Logan pointed to a constellation he had learned about, his enthusiasm lighting up the night. "You know what Mom would say?" Logan asked, his voice filled with childlike wisdom. "What's that, champ?" Ethan asked. "She'd say we finally learned to dance in the rain." Ethan and Amelia exchanged a glance, their hearts full. "She'd be right," Ethan said, pulling his son and new wife into a warm embrace. The Blake family had faced storms, but together, they had found their way to calmer seas, a testament to the resilience of love and the healing power of hope.